Listening to Watchman on the Pod. We are going to continue in our book reading, The Black Pope, A History of the Jesuits by M.F. Cusack, formerly the Nun of Kinmar. We are in chapter 9, the heading, The Disloyal Teaching. Disloyal teaching in Jesuit colleges, case of Prince Boris. Are heretics to be tolerated? Jesuit encouraged Popish plots against English sovereigns. Extracts from the Month, a Jesuit magazine. The Jesuits in the United States. Jesuit scheme for the Romanizing of England. Father Parsons. General of the Jesuits has the power of life and death. Jesuits hung by Jesuits. The general can sentence to death without trial. Jarridge's case, teaching on murder, the secret, immense printing concern of the Jesuit fathers. The object of the last chapter has been to show from authority which cannot be disputed the disloyal character of Roman Catholic teaching. Nothing can excuse it, and nothing can explain it away. But the Jesuits are necessarily and naturally the great exponents of this teaching. Hence, we now turn to their authorized books of theology. It was shown exclusively on Roman Catholic authority in the preceding chapter that Roman Catholics are obliged to be disloyal. The government of the country in which they live may or may not hold the same opinions as the what is best for the prosperity and peace of their native land as the Pope. But whatever may be the opinions of those who rule or decide public affairs, the opinion of the Pope must be considered first and must be obeyed first. Many instances might be given here of the interference of the popes in politics, but one must suffice. It is chosen merely because it shows in what details this ecclesiastical pressure makes itself felt. In the Morning Post, August 15th, 1893, we read that the Marquis de Breteuil resigned his seat in the chamber, and in a letter of explanation addressed to his constituency at Argelès, refers to the profound perturbation caused in the conservative ranks by the recent action of the Vatican in regard to the Republic, and expresses his conviction and that of his constituents that a Republican form of government is synonymous with the persecution and destruction of faith. Now, the French Conservative Party have always been the most devoted Catholics. Yet, at one word, the Pope compels them to abandon the policy they have pursued for years, and they are obliged to abandon it. In the case of Prince Boris is contemporary history. This case of interference with parental rights is noteworthy because we hear so much from Romanists in England of these rights as a solemn duty not to be interfered with, no doubt to impress the people of England by whom they are specially respected. But what of parental rights in Bulgaria? What, indeed, it may be asked, of national rights? What makes this case especially oppressive and high-handed is the fact that while Rome might denounce such a proceeding, if the transfer of faith were made to what she would term an heretical church, Rome actually acknowledges the rights of the Greek church to valid priesthood and lawful sacraments. However, whenever Rome dilates on parental rights, she always means her own rights, for she recognizes no other. The teaching of the Jesuit must, as we have said elsewhere, be always the same as the teaching of the church. The Jesuit, therefore, is obliged, whether he will or not, to teach this disloyalty. But the great evil is that the Jesuit always practices disloyalty and has opportunities which other priests and teachers have not of enforcing his dangerous doctrines. The Jesuit teaches them in his schools. He teaches them in his colleges. He teaches them to his penitents, not the least important part of his work. Further, he publishes books in this country which teach this disloyalty, and then he comes before a too confiding public and declares that he is a devoted Englishman and would almost lay down his life in the service of his queen and country. He plots treason for the greater honor and glory of God, and he proclaims himself honest while he is practicing deceit of the worst kind. And all this is done in the sacred name of religion. The Jesuits have their own printing press, their own compositors, their own workmen. They can print what they please and do what they please because this is a free country. But surely is it carrying liberty rather far to allow such license for such a purpose? One of the works recently published by the Jesuits is called Aquinas Ethicus and consists of extracts from the Summa Theological of St. Thomas Aquinas. The translator is the Reverend Joseph Rickaby, S.J. We give the following quotation from this work from Volume 1, pages 332 and 333. Are heretics to be tolerated? With regard to heretics, two elements are to be considered. One element on their side and the other on the part of the church. On their side is the sin whereby they have deserved not only to be separated from the church by excommunication, but also to be banished from the world by death. For it is a much heavier offense to corrupt the faith, whereby the life of the soul is sustained, than to tamper with the coinage, which is an aid to temporal life. Hence, if coiners or other malefactors are at once handed over by secular princes to a just death, much more may heretics immediately they are convicted of heresy be not only excommunicated, but also justly done to die. Beyond the part of the church is mercy in view of conversion of them that err, and therefore she does not condemn at once, but after the first and second admonition, as the apostle teaches in Titus 3:10. After that, however, if the man is still found pertinacious, the church, having no hope of his conversion, provides for the safety of others, cutting him off from the church by sentence of excommunication, and further, she leaves him to the secular power to be exterminated from the world by death. He states, that's unquote, he states that as things are, it is a question whether it would be prudent in her, the church, nowadays to visit heresy with all the ancient penalties, even if she had might on her side. Yet he impresses on his readers the fact that the Church of Rome still insists on her right to punish by corporal inflictions. Certainly, it cannot now be said that English Jesuits have deceived the English people. If our immediate descendants are done to die, either by civil war stirred up by the Jesuits to win England for Rome, or in the horrors of the Inquisition, presided over by priests, as it always has been, they can justly say, we told you this, or why did you add to our power every day socially and politically until we were able to crush you? This is also the doctrine taught and approved by the present Pope, who is credited with being a liberal. When it is remembered that every one of the popish plots for the deposition of English sovereigns were of just Jesuit origin, it is time to ask if such men should be encouraged and supported in this country. When popes, cardinals, and bishops have feared their power and tried often and vainly to control them, there is surely a justification for fear of the secret work, which even now they may be plotting in England. Indeed, Romanists seem to take a pride in declaring their contempt for the laws of the country, which has helped and sheltered them when they have been restrained and banished from countries once exclusively Roman Catholic. The following extracts from Roman Catholic papers supported and authorized by the Church will show that the above statement is not mere assertion. Quote, upon the passing of the 14th and 15th, and it says VIC cap 60 AD, I don't know what any of that means, 1851, forbidding the assumption of Roman Catholic ecclesiastical territorial titles within the United Kingdom. An assumption forbidden also by the 24th section of 10 Geo the Fourth, I think that's George the Fourth, C7 through the RC leading paper, the tablet of July 26, 1851, page 478, said, quote, neither in England nor in Ireland will the Catholics obey the law of Parliament. They have before them two things called law, which contradict each other. Both cannot be obeyed. One of them is the law of God. The other is not law at all. It pretends to be an act of Parliament, but in the direction of legislation, it has no more value than a solemn enactment that the moon is made of green cheese. The law of God, that is the Pope's command. If carried into effect, the parliamentary lie will be treated as all honest men treat a lie, that is rigorously disobeyed, will be spit upon and trampled underfoot. The utter contempt shown by English Romanists of the laws of their country is further aptly illustrated by the Weekly Register, another Roman Catholic paper of June 21st, 1868. This paper wrote, quote, it, the Ecclesiastical Titles Act then in force, is broken every day in the year. It has been broken without hesitation or intermission ever since it received the royal assent, and it will be broken without hesitation every time that its infraction becomes necessary, so long as it defiles the status book, unquote. The Weekly Register makes no secret of the intentions of those it represents and says plainly, if we like the laws, we obey them. If not, we defy them. In the United States, the Jesuits are still more active and all public organizations are at their mercy. Monsignor Satoli, the apostolic delegate in the United States, has promulgated an edict of the Pope placing under the ban of the Church as secret societies the Oddfellows, the Knights of Pythias, and the Sons of Temperance, December 21st, 1894. Amongst other works published openly by the Jesuits, there is a magazine called The Month. The name was chosen, we believe, so the Protestants might not suspect that the serial was Roman Catholic. The venture at first promised failure, but when it was taken in hand by the Jesuits, it proved a brilliant success. A remarkable article was published in this magazine in October 1889. It is headed, A Jesuit Scheme for the Reformation of England. The word Reformation is, we suspect, purposely misleading. It should be a Jesuit scheme for the Romanizing of England. When it is added that this scheme originated with and was arranged by Parsons, the value of the title that this scheme originated with, the value of the title would be better understood. We may do the Jesuits the justice to say that they never put this personal safety in competition with the success of their work. When therefore the Jesuit who writes on this subject declares that the scheme was not published for some time after it was written because it was not safe to do so, we know that he refers to the necessity of concealing the conspiracy, not to the security of the conspirators. Probably it is thought quite safe to publish the scheme. Now the people of England have been hypnotized into acquiescence with whatever Rome pleases to do. Parsons was a pervert and had been a fellow of Balliol College, Oxford. Archbishop Abbott says he was expelled for bad conduct and peculation. The Jesuits say that he abandoned his fellowship because he desired to become a Romanist. Perhaps one statement is not irreconcilable with the other. His treatise was published in London with a biographical notice by the Reverend Edward G., the rector of a Protestant church in London in 1690. Mr. G had a bad opinion of Parsons and had special opportunity for forming it. Parsons' book is, at all events, another proof that the Jesuits were the active partners in every effort to overthrow the Protestant government in England. His Protestant biographer says that he was fierce, turbulent, and bold. Parsons' Roman Catholic editor says that he had to account for the rapid return of the people of England to the Protestant religion after the death of Mary, and gives his reasons. He says, quote, many priests that had fallen and married in King Edward's day were admitted presently to the altar without satisfaction, then only to send their wives out of men's sight, and of some it is thought they did not so much as confess themselves before they said mass again. Others that had preached against Catholics were admitted presently to preach for them, and others that had been visitors and commissioners against us were made commissioners against the Protestants, and in this Queen's time were commissioners again of the other side against ours. So, as the matter went as a stage play, where men do change their persons and parts without change of their minds or affections. But Romanists in general, and the Jesuits in particular, have always a sharp eye on temporal affairs, and the weakness or indifference of Protestants too often affords them ample ground for concluding that if they ask with sufficient importunity, they will be sure to receive. It grieved the heart of the Jesuit that even Roman Catholics should possess the lands which the Church had sedulously grasped in preceding reigns, and he blames the Church for allowing these lands to return to the original Catholic owners, even by the papal permission. There can be no doubt that Rome has full details of all the estates which she claims to be the property of her Church in the United Kingdom. And when she has secured the spoils of Ireland, she will turn her attention to England and Scotland, beginning, no doubt, with the plea of requiring funds for the educational purposes. Parsons says, now in Queen Mary's reign, all possessors of church lands had, with a few exceptions, retained them. Some had applied to Rome for a bull of toleration. Others had never taken the trouble to do so. Many of the applicants, he tells us, had sent false information as the ground of their petition, and yet thought themselves safe in conscience. Yea, he has taken for a great Catholic who would be so much as, no. Yea, he was taken for a great Catholic who would so much as ask for a bull. This accounts, in his opinion, for the transitory character of the change, and for the fact of the second scourge of heresy having proved so sharp and heavy. From all this, it is evident that the greatest crime in the eyes of the Jesuits were the honest marriage of a priest and the holding of money or land which the Church claimed as her own. The Jesuit writer in the month makes several remarks which are noteworthy. He expresses his no small astonishment that so many of Father Parsons' plans and recommendations have been already carried out in England. Whether his surprise is real or assumed, the fact can be easily accounted for. For some years, the Jesuits have had their well-trained pupils in every department of state, in the army, in the navy, in Parliament, on the judicial bench, and it can scarcely be a matter of surprise that they have carried out the teaching of their masters. The foundation stone was to be the placing of a Catholic monarch on the throne. This, the Jesuit writer appears to consider quite possible at the present day. He says, Father Parsons' object in his book, however, is not to criticize the past, but to provide such plans for the future that Catholics may avail themselves of them if the occasion offers of restoring the Roman Catholic Church in England. No doubt the occasion will be made, and probably it is already in the process of making. Father Parsons is constructive throughout, and his constructive scheme is not only that of a good and prudent man, but of one who knows by experience the nature of the evils to be met and the best remedies for them. He is very practical and sometimes enters into detail into which we shall not attempt to follow him. But the main features of his proposal are of permanent interest, not merely as an historical study, but as affording some valuable suggestions for the guidance of Catholics, even in circumstances very different from those which the headstrong House of Stuart turned to such ill account. Having had access to the original, we note two special points which the Jesuit writer in the month has thought it prudent to pass by, at least for the present. Father Parsons insists on securing a Roman Catholic king, and still more on securing a Roman Catholic parliament and a Roman Catholic succession. As far as Ireland is concerned, his plans for a Roman Catholic parliament are already carried out, as the bishops either nominate or approve the candidates for the greater part of Ireland, and no others need apply. Parsons says that the king can in no wise be better able to satisfy his duty to God and to assure his own possession and estate than by making account that the security of himself, his crown, and successor dependeth principally on the assurance and good establishment of the Catholic religion within his kingdom. For this purpose, he must not only give singular care for restoring perfectly the Catholic religion in the realm, but must uphold and maintain the same and provide for the perpetuation thereof. And to ensure this, he must first of all assure the succession of the crown by good provision of laws, and in such manner link the state of Catholic religion and succession together as the one may depend and be the assurance of the other. Upon the important question of the constitution of Parliament, Father Parsons gives the most explicit instructions in his memorial. The higher house is to be strengthened by the admission thereto of the principal men of the religious order, a device, no doubt, for placing that august body under the control of the Jesuits. He then proposes that for choosing knights of the shire and burgesses, a more perfect and exact order should be set down, and less subject to partiality and corruption, and that information be taken of their names and religion. In the election of the representatives, Father Parsons recommends that, for a time at least, power should be given to the bishop of the diocese to judge of their virtue and forwardness in religion, and to confirm their election, or to have a negative voice when cause should be offered. This is not all, for this Jesuit adds that these representatives should be required to make public profession of their faith before their election could be admitted. He makes provision for instituting an inquiry as to all the rights and privileges taken from Parliament since the entrance of heresy, which are to be restored by the crown. And then he directs that every man be sworn to defend the Roman Catholic faith. And moreover, that it would be made treason forever for any man to propose anything for change thereof, or for the introduction of heresy. When Rome acts thus in her own interest, it is all right. But if Protestants protect themselves in a similar manner, it is bigotry and illiberality. Father Parsons then furnished instructions for the making of laws by the Catholic Parliament, which he would establish. And first, he proposes to abrogate and revoke all laws whatsoever have been made at any time, or by any prince or parliament, directly or indirectly, in prejudice of the Catholic Roman religion, and to restore and put in full authority again all laws, all old laws, that ever were in use in England in favor of the same and against heresies and heretics. Here is Father Parsons' idea of toleration, to be provided that this toleration be only with such a live, quietly, and our desires to be informed of the truth, and do not teach and preach or seek to infect others. So you don't witness, you don't convert people. I'm thinking that's what that means. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it means. All right, anyway. For willful apostates or malicious persecutors or obstinate perverters of others, how they may be dealt withal. This distinguished Jesuit states, "It belongeth not to a man of my vocation to suggest, but rather to commend their state to Almighty God, and their treaty to the wisdom of such as shall be in authority in the commonwealth at that day, admonishing them only, that as God doth not govern the whole monarchy, but by rewards and chastisements, and that as he has had a sweet hand to cherish the well affected, so hath he a strong arm to bind the boisterous, stubborn, and rebellious. Even so, the very like and same must be the proceeding of a perfect Catholic prince and commonwealth." And then nearer it goes to the imitation of God's government in this and all other points, the better. And the more exact and the more durable it is and will be ever. The astute Jesuits suggest a military order for suppressing heretics are the ransomers, the outcome of the suggestion. The Council of the Reformation was also to consider how some new order of knights, similar to the orders of the Knights of St. John of Malta, might be erected in the realm for the exercise of the young gentlemen and nobility, whose rule should be to fight against heretics in whatever country they should be employed. And Father Parson adds that whereas their ancestors to fight against infidels, less dangerous and odious to God than these heretics, undertook long and perilous journeys into Asia and other countries. So the members of this new order should show their valor against heretics and enemies of God and his church of these our days, as well at home among us, as also in divers kingdoms round about us. Care was also to be taken from the expurgation of all heretical books. Public and private libraries are to be searched and examined for books. Also, all bookbinders, stationaries, and bookseller shops, and all heretical books and pamphlets were utterly to be removed, burnt, suppressed, and severe order and punishment appointed for such as shall conceal these kinds of writings. Successive Protestant governments in this country have been wearied with applications and have used their best endeavors to relieve Roman Catholics from every possible religious or legal disability. But we learn from this memorial of Father Parsons that when the Roman Catholic power is restored, it is to be considered whether it shall be fit to disable some great and able heretics and their posterity, especially if they have been principal authors in the overthrowing of the Catholic religion, not only from priesthood and ecclesiastical dignities, but also from other honors and preferments temporal of the commonwealth, for warning and deterring of others. Father Parsons also suggested in this memorial that in order to put the Commonwealth in joint again, it would be desirable to appoint a Council of Reformation. This Council of Reformation was to consist of certain prudent and zealous men who, in authority by the Prince and Parliament and the Pope's holiness, and for the name of Inquisition, may be somewhat odious and offensive at the beginning. Father Parsons proposes that the name given to these men should be the Council of the Reformation. But it is advised that before this council make an end of their office, when they shall have settled and secured the state of Catholic religion, it would be very much necessary that they should leave some good and sound manner of inquisition established for the Inquisition established for the conservation of that which they had planted, that perhaps it would be best to spare the name of Inquisition at the first beginning, which in so new and green a state of religion as ours must needs be, after so many years of heresy, may chance offend and exasperate more than to do good. But afterwards it will be necessary to bring it in either by that of some other name as shall be thought most convenient at the time. For that, without this care, all will slide down and fall again. Also, it's like just trickery with names and words. The memorial proceeds to be consideration of the form and manner of inquisition, which it will be desirable to bring into this kingdom. The merits of the respective inquisitions set up in Spain, Italy, and Rome are severely discussed or severally discussed, and it is suggested that possibly a mixture of all will not be amiss for England when the day shall come. Nevertheless, special commendation is given to the diligent and exact manner of proceeding that then prevailed in Spain, as being so necessary as without this no matter of moment can be expected. It is also stated that some high council of delegates from His Holiness must reside in the court, as in Spain is used, or else all will languish. The prisons of the Inquisition are also to be separated from the concourse of the people, and some sharp execution of justice is to be made upon the obstinate and remediless. We are hearing a great deal at the present day of the liberality which we ought to extend to our Catholic brethren. It would be well if we knew a little more of the kind of liberality which they propose to extend to us as soon as they had power. Every concession to Catholics, whether that concession be small or great, is hastening the day when they can carry out the plan of which the Jesuits at the present day have so boldly and openly approved. Let us hear no more then of the Jesuits as the benefactors of mankind, as amiable gentlemen who merit our consideration. Let it be noted that we make no doubtful or calumnious charge against them. What we have advanced are stern facts, and facts which should sink deep into the heart of every reader. Nor can the matter be referred to the past. Romanists are very anxious to persuade us that the age of persecution and intolerance has passed. It is not past, and those who say this know that well. Here is the proof that Rome is as intolerant, as narrow, as cruel, and as determined to exterminate Englishmen. We do to even use the word Protestant, as ever she was in the darkest ages of her dark career, if they do not accept her creed. The Jesuit must know that they have hope of success, or they would never have made their plans public. It was a daring act, but they are daring men. I use no harsh or bitter language about them. I have known Jesuits in my Roman Catholic days to whom I was indebted for many a kindness, men who I believe would have shrunk from the cruelties which are purposed or proposed in this vile plot on English liberties, religious, social, and political. The danger is that those who may have known such men should suppose that they are real representatives of the order, or that they would dare to be anything else but cruel if they were commanded to be cruel. These men, if ordered by the church or by their ecclesiastical superiors, would not hesitate for one moment to torture their nearest and dearest relatives or bring them to the stake, such is the power of religious fanaticism. Once more, let it be said, the fact is there, and there is no evading it. So lately, in the year 1889, the Jesuit editors of the Jesuit Representative magazine published such parts of Parsons' scheme as they dared, and approved what they were too prudent to publish in these words. Quote, "His scheme is not only that of a good and prudent man, but of one who knows by experience the nature of the evils to be met and the best remedies for them. The main features of his proposal are of permanent interest, not merely as a historical study, but as affording some valuable suggestions for the guidance of Catholics, and in circumstances very different from those which the headstrong house of Stuart turned to such ill account." Unquote. This is plain speaking, and the Jesuits mean what they say. We now proceed to show from historical evidence that the Jesuits claimed for themselves the power of life and death. Murder of Jesuits. We give the following extracts from Grisinger's History of the Jesuits, page 649. Quote, in the underground vault in the Munich Jesuit College, 11 human skeletons hung in chains were found, which were all dressed in Jesuit clothing and had apparently fallen victims to the extreme justice of the order. The commissary had to be satisfied with the declaration of the rector that these were 11 brethren who had lost their reason, unquote. This was on the suppression of the order in 1773 in the time of Joseph II of Austria. At the College of Insulat, I can't say that word. That's in China quite too. At the College of Insulat were found things which strongly compromised the order of Jesus, as, for example, a crucifix, which, when it was kissed, the person kissing it was killed by by a dagger springing out. Also, an executioner's sword with the remarkable inscription, which I can't say that word. Well, there's a whole bunch of words. Hac ferum centium et, I can't even say all those. So anyway, that's in French, or I don't know what the word is. All right. Jardage case, Gersinger, page 498, quote, in 1648, Jarridge, a professed Jesuit of the Four Vows, escaped from La Rochelle to Linden in Holland. Quote, at Linden, he published a book called The Jesuits on the Scaffold, owing to the high crimes perpetuated by them in the province of Guyenne, unquote. Page 501, quote, Ponthelier, a Jesuit, well disguised, was sent to Linden, where Jarridge was. They were known to have met, but he suddenly disappeared, and so did Pamphilier, and no searches officially instituted ever cleared the matter. In 1651, the order published Jarridge's so-called recantation, but his exposure of the order and the recantation are not in the same style or by the same hand, which is quite evident, and the recantation is a palpable forgery, unquote. I have examined both books in the British Museum. Page 502, quote, there was an exposure of the order in 1645, evidently written by a member called The Monarchy of Salispin by L.C. Iropois. The Jesuits never discovered the author. It was published in Venice, unquote. Teaching on Murder, Gersinger, page 488. Escobar, 1655. In his Moral Theology teaches, quote, that it is absolutely allowable to kill a man whenever the general welfare or proper security demands it, unquote. Quote, to defend his life or his honor, a son may murder his father, a monk his abbot, and a subject his prince, unquote. Herman Busenbaum. Father Francis Lang, and it's DISP, D-I-S period, so it's an abbreviation for something, 36, and then number 148, quote, it is an established truth that ecclesiastics must save their honor and consideration at any price, even at that of the life of a person insulting them. This is especially the case when the loss of their honor would tend to disgrace the whole order. Father Hendricks Summa Theologii Moralis, 1600, quote, if an ecclesiastic murder the husband of a wife with whom he is caught in adultery, he is quite justified in doing so. Wow, unquote. Benedict Sladel, volume 1, page 337 of his Moral Philosophy, quote, a real injury bringing disgrace may be retaliated by the murder of the insulter, unquote. The Secret, Gersinger, page 474. Bishop Palafox wrote to Innocent X in 1649, quote, but the Jesuits alone shroud themselves intentionally in a darkness which the laity are completely forbidden to penetrate, and the veil is not even lifted or uplifted to many of the members. There are among them a large number who have taken merely 3 vows, but not the 4th, and who are in consequence not at all, or at any rate, not properly instructed regarding the true principles, institutions, and liberties of the order. This secret, on the other hand, is entrusted, as is known to His Holiness, to only a small number, and whatever is especially important is known only to the superior and the general. Unquote. Quote, the Duke de Saint Simon in his memoirs, 150 years later, says the same thing. But there is another class book which needs careful attention. This work is a translation from the German of Dr. Joseph Haringenrather. In this work, one of no small Roman Catholic importance, the doctrine of the lawfulness, or rather the duty of killing heretics and disposing heretical sovereigns, is fully defended and carefully taught. And this is done openly in the 19th century. Much capital is made in this book of certain expressions and acts of Protestants at the time of the Reformation, who declared it lawful for their brethren to fight for their religion and to dispose in open war those kings or princes who were persecuting Protestants. But surely this is something very different from the blessing of secret assassins by the head of the Romanist Church and the fulmination of spiritual cursings on the head of a lawful sovereign, merely because that sovereign was a Protestant. It would occupy our space then can be given to this matter here to go fully into the teaching of this book, but in it, the doctrine of the Romanist Church that it is a duty to exterminate heretics is fully taught and earnestly defended. The Pope's plans for the assassination of Queen Elizabeth are justified. Indeed, his bull of excommunication of that sovereign placed her at the mercy of anyone who pleased to kill her and who could plead the Pope's authority for so doing. Many other cases are brought forward for justification in which the popes at various times exercised what they are pleased to call their spiritual rights to incite to the murder of princes and people who would not submit to their rule. Some of these popes were men of infamous character, and they were infallible all the same. And this doctrine is fully approved at the present day by the present Pope. For in his encyclical of scholastic philosophy, Leo XIII ordered his ecclesiastics throughout the world as follows, quote, let the teachers whom you shall discreetly choose make it their aim to instill the doctrine of Thomas Aquinas into the minds of their scholars, and to set it in clear light, his solidity and excellence above all other teachers, unquote. In the relations of the church to society, by the late Father O'Reilly, S.J., with preface by Matthew Russell, S.J., the author teaches that, quote, a Protestant clergyman or a Protestant layman as effectually introduces the child whom he validly baptizes into the Catholic Church as the Pope could and into no other, and to conclude what has been said concerning persons subject to the Church's laws, I may add, though the statement seems rather superfluous, that no temporal dignity, however exalted, exempts from the obligation of obedience to them. A king, as such, has no prerogative of spiritual independence any more than he has of a spiritual authority. The object of this statement may be immediately apparent to those who are not familiar. Let me read that again. The object of this statement may not be immediately apparent to those who are not familiar with the Roman Catholic teaching. It is nonetheless important. Rome claims every lawfully baptized person as her own, no matter how strongly the person may object to this approbation. Thus, on her theory of church government, she claims the right to dispose of that person's body and soul at her pleasure. She claims the right to put him to death in this world and to damn him eternally in the next, as she pleases, no matter whether he has ever given his consent to her usurpation or his immortal soul or not. Further, the delicately conveyed hint about royalty being of the same level with others is not without its intention also. It simply means that Leo the 13th has the same right to dispose or sanction the assassination of Queen Victoria as his infallible predecessor, Pius V, had to excommunicate and, as far as his power could go, to dispose Queen Elizabeth. One fact is worth 1,000 assertions, and the fact that the Jesuits and indeed all Roman Catholic professors are teaching today in England this horrible doctrine as being the very truth of God ought not to be overlooked by those who care even for the material prosperity of their country. She has in parentheses here, we have been informed that a very large sum of money has been given to the Jesuit fathers to purchase all that was necessary for an immense printing concern. They are by no means content with leaflets or pamphlets, but are issuing large volumes and having them placed in public libraries. May we not hope that some Protestants will have the same zeal for the circulation of books which may counteract this danger. Wow. All right, brothers and sisters, that's a lot. That's a lot. Absolutely, that's a lot. All right, keep your eyes on Jesus. Your nose in the book, which is the Word of God, and embed the Word of God upon the tablets of your hearts, so you and I will not sin against God or be deceived. Until next time, brothers and sisters, get your nose in that book, get a praise upon those lips, and ask God to lead you and guide you throughout his holy scriptures. I love you all. Bye-bye.